January, 986 AD, northern Iceland, past midnight. A longhouse, 15 people beneath wool and fur. Outside, -40 and falling. Inside, something is wrong. The fire has collapsed to a thin line of fading orange beneath the ash. The hearthstones are cooling. The air is tightening, degree by degree. Near the far wall, a grandmother shivers in her sleep. A child presses deeper against his mother. Nobody stirs. If no one wakes to feed those coals in the next few minutes, this longhouse will cross a line it cannot come back from. This video is about why sleeping through the night was never an option in the Viking world. How they turned fire, food, bedding, and even their own bodies into a layered survival system, each piece depending on every other. And one detail, why they stripped off their warmest clothing before getting into bed, goes against every instinct you have. Every Viking who survived a northern winter knew which hours were the most dangerous. Not the evening, when the fire still burned strong. Not midnight, when someone was usually still awake. The hours between 3 and 5 in the morning. Modern science confirms why. This is when outside air reaches its lowest temperature, and this is when the human body hits what researchers call the circadian trough. Core temperature drops, heart rate slows, metabolic heat production falls to its weakest point. 2 clocks reaching their lowest at the same hour. Mountain rescue teams across Scandinavia know this window well. The majority of cold exposure casualties occur right here, between 3 and 5. Now, picture a Viking longhouse during those hours. The hearth has been burning since morning, but fire does not maintain itself. Coals lose heat. Ash smothers the embers. Without someone intervening, the room drifts toward freezing by the time those 2 clocks converge. And here is the second threat. Fire in a longhouse was not just warmth, it was danger. Dry straw bedding, wool blankets, animal fat in open vessels, timber framing. An untended hearth could die, or it could throw a spark, and the structure that kept a family alive would turn against them in minutes. As we explored in our earlier video on Viking longhouses, the building itself was a thermal achievement. Turf walls that stored heat, livestock exhaling warmth into the shared space, a smoke layer beneath the roof acting as an invisible blanket. But all of that protected against the average cold. The danger zone between midnight and dawn, when the fire weakened and the body cooled, was something architecture alone could not solve. The Norse understood this, and they did not leave it to chance. Every layer of their night, the fire, the bed, the meal, the way they slept, was a calculated answer to those few hours when everything worked against them. At the center of every longhouse sat a hearth, built not for spectacle but for endurance. A long, shallow, stone-lined pit, sometimes stretching 3 meters or more, packed with dense rocks selected for one property: the ability to absorb heat slowly and release it even slower. During the day, the fire burned openly. Meals were cooked, wet clothing dried, tools were repaired by the warmth. But the real engineering happened in the evening. As the household prepared for sleep, the fire was deliberately reduced, not extinguished, managed. The technique was called banking. Glowing coals were raked together into a tight bed, then covered with a thick layer of ash. Ash is a remarkably effective insulator. It slowed the release of heat from the coals, stretching their life from minutes into hours. A well-banked fire could hold viable embers through an entire night, ready to be uncovered, fed with kindling, and brought back to life before dawn. The hearthstones did the rest. dense rock that had spent 12 hours absorbing energy from the fire now became a slow-release radiator. Even after the visible flames disappeared, those stones pushed warmth into the room, quietly, steadily, for hours. But here is the part most accounts skip over. Someone had to manage this. A banked fire is not a guaranteed fire. Coals shift, ash layers crack. A draft from the door can accelerate cooling in minutes. If nobody checked, nobody adjusted, nobody fed a piece of dried peat or cattle dung into the embers at the right moment, the fire died. And once a hearth goes fully cold in the middle of an Arctic night, relighting it with hand tools in darkness is a desperate act. Was night fire watching a formal rotation like a ship's watch? Or did it fall to whoever slept lightest, the elderly, the restless, the anxious? The sagas do not spell it out. Some researchers point to strict household hierarchies and argue it was assigned. Others see it as informal and adaptive. The truth may be somewhere between. What is beyond doubt is that someone was always awake in these hours. The fire required it. The family depended on it. Think about this. Your home has a thermostat that adjusts itself while you sleep. The Viking thermostat was a man sitting in the dark, watching the color of the coals, judging by feel whether the room was holding or falling. Same function, 1,000 years apart. Modern heating engineers would call this a manually operated thermal regulation system with biological sensing and variable fuel input. The Vikings just called it Tuesday night. And here is what connects this to everything that follows. That night watcher was not only guarding the fire, he was guarding the entire system, the bedding, the bodies, the food energy slowly burning inside every sleeping person. Because each of those layers was designed to work together. Remove one, and the others could not compensate, starting with the surface each person slept on. A Viking bed was not a piece of furniture, it was a thermal device, and every layer existed for a specific physical reason. Start with position. Families slept on raised wooden platforms called set, built along the interior walls. At the Stong farmstead in southern Iceland, buried by volcanic ash in 1104 AD and excavated in the 1930s, these platforms are clearly visible, raised 40 to 60 centimeters above the floor. That height was not about comfort. Cold air is denser than warm air. It sinks. In a longhouse where the hearth sits at floor level, the coldest air in the room collects in the lowest 30 centimeters. Sleeping on the ground would mean lying in the coldest band of air in the house. Raising the bed above it was the simplest, most effective thermal decision the Norse made indoors. On top of the platform came the first insulation layer, dried straw, rushes, or pine branches packed loosely. The purpose was not softness. It was trapped air. Thousands of tiny pockets between the stalks, each one a miniature barrier slowing the transfer of heat from your body into the cold wood below. Above the straw came animal hides. Reindeer fur was the material of choice across much of the Norse world. Each reindeer hair is hollow, a tube filled with air. Millions of microscopic insulation chambers pressed against the sleeper's body. Modern thermal testing confirms that reindeer hide outperforms most synthetic insulation materials at equivalent thickness. The Vikings had no term for thermal resistance. They had something better. Centuries of knowing which material kept you warmest. Then wool blankets, dense, heavy, lanolin-rich. As we detailed in our first video, Norse wool repelled moisture and trapped heat even when damp. This was the wind and vapor barrier. the outer shell of the sleeping system, and then the layer that still surprises researchers. The Oseberg ship burial, dated to around 834 AD, contained the grave goods of two high-status women. Among the artifacts, over 31 kilograms of down feathers. To put that in perspective, a modern high-quality duvet uses roughly 1 kilogram of down fill. The Oseberg burial held enough for 31 duvets. This was not decoration, it was survival technology on a scale that speaks to how seriously the Norse treated the science of staying warm at night. But some households went further. At Stong and other Icelandic sites, archaeologists have found enclosed box beds, small wooden compartments built into the platform with walls and a door. Pull it shut, and you create a microclimate. Body heat alone could push the interior 10 degrees or more above the open room. You know this if you have ever slept outdoors. Sleeping pad to block ground conduction, sleeping bag for insulation, bivy sack to cut wind and moisture. Same physics. The Viking version arrived at the identical solution 1,000 years earlier. But even the finest bed could not generate heat. It could only hold what was already there. And the most powerful heat source in any Viking longhouse was not the fire. It was the people inside it. In the Viking world, sleeping alone was not a preference. It was a vulnerability. The physics are straightforward. A resting human body produces roughly 80 watts of thermal energy. Constant, automatic. Ask nothing of it, and it still radiates heat like a low-powered furnace. Now, place two people together beneath heavy coverings in an enclosed space. 160 watts, sealed under wool, fur, and down, with wind blocked and moisture managed. The air inside that shared bed could sit 15 to 20 degrees above the room temperature. That is the difference between discomfort and real danger. And the Norse maximized it. Families slept side by side on the same platform. But the arrangement was never random. Children and the elderly, the most vulnerable to cold, were placed in the center where body heat concentrated. Stronger adults slept along the outer edges, absorbing the colder air creeping in from the walls. Everyone contributed warmth. Everyone benefited. As we showed in our first video, Viking crews at sea used the same principle. Sealed hide sleeping sacks called hoothfat held 2 men each, rotating with the watch schedule so the bag never went cold. On land, the scale changed. The logic did not. Think about climbing into a sleeping bag on a cold night. That slow transition from shivering to warmth as your body heat fills the space around you. A Viking family went through that same process every single night for 6 months of the year. If you have a story from a cold night outdoors, it belongs in the comments. And now, the detail that goes against your instincts. Before climbing into bed, Vikings removed their heavy outer clothing. Wool tunics, cloaks, leggings, anything worn during the day came off. They slept in light, dry linen shifts close to the body. This sounds reckless. It was the opposite. Daytime clothing absorbed moisture, sweat, snow, damp air. Wet fabric against skin does not insulate. It conducts. It pulls heat away from the body far faster than dry air. Dry linen let body heat transfer freely into the shared bedding instead of being wasted warming cold, damp wool. The Norse understood this. Dry and light under heavy coverings beats wet and layered every time. Modern cold weather survival training teaches the identical rule. Everything we have discussed so far works from the outside in. Walls holding heat, bedding trapping it, bodies sharing it. But the Vikings had one more layer, and it worked from the inside out. The evening meal in a Viking household was never light. It was engineered. When you eat foods rich in fat and protein, your body generates heat during digestion, a process called diet-induced thermogenesis. Carbohydrates burn fast and fade. Fat burns through the night. And Viking winter meals were built around fat. Butter stirred into everything. Dried fish, dense with protein and omega-3 fatty acids. Bone broth simmered for hours over the hearth, rich with minerals and animal fat. Skyr, thick, cold, fermented dairy that kept for months without spoiling. A hot meal raised core temperature immediately. Fat and protein sustained it for hours. The body became its own furnace, generating heat long after the last bowl was set aside. Modern nutritionists would tell you that eating a heavy, fatty meal right before bed is a poor decision. The Vikings, facing -30 outside and a fire that might not last the night, would have had a different opinion on the matter. A strong one. Going to bed hungry in a Viking winter was not discomfort. It was a direct path to losing body heat faster than your coverings could hold it. Feeding the household was not separate from keeping them warm. It was the same act. Every calorie on the plate was a calorie the body could burn against the cold. One final layer, and this one, no one in the Viking world would have thought to mention, because it was as natural to them as breathing. In 2001, a historian named Roger Ekirch revealed something that had been hiding in plain sight. After 16 years of research across 500 historical sources, he documented a pattern. Before artificial lighting changed human behavior, people across Europe did not sleep in a single block. They slept in 2 phases. A first sleep after dark, a natural waking period around midnight, then a second sleep through to dawn. The Norse practiced this without question, and it served their survival perfectly. That midnight waking was not a burden. It was the window when the fire was checked, the coals adjusted, the animals listened to, the household quietly maintained. The body woke on its own, as if by design. Because it was. In the 1990s, a sleep researcher named Thomas Weir confirmed this at the National Institute of Mental Health. Volunteers, placed in 14 hours of darkness each night, shifted into the same 2-phase pattern within weeks. No instruction, no cultural influence, biology alone. Your body still carries this rhythm. If you wake at 2 or 3 in the morning and lie quietly in the dark before sleep returns, that is not a disorder. It is the echo of a survival program older than written history, one that kept a Viking family's fire burning, their animals safe, and their household intact through the most dangerous hours of the coldest nights on Earth. Here is what a Viking night actually looked like, taken whole. A hearth banked with ash, its heat stored in stone, releasing warmth hour by hour. A bed built in layers, straw, fur, wool, down. Bodies pressed together, the weakest placed where warmth gathered most. A belly full of fat burning slow through the dark. And through it all, a rhythm of waking and watching that kept the fire alive when the cold reached its deepest. No single piece worked alone. Remove the fire, the bed cannot compensate. Remove the food, the body cools too fast. Remove the watcher, the fire dies and the system collapses. Every layer supported every other. The popular image of Vikings is always about daylight, raids, voyages, battles. But for 6 months of every year, the real test came after dark. And they met it not with endurance, but with engineering, quiet, layered, precise. If this is the kind of history that changes how you see the past, Not battles and kings, but the way people actually lived. There is more coming. Subscribing means you will be here when it arrives. A longhouse, January. The coals hold their glow beneath the ash. 15 people breathe slowly under layers of wool and fur. Outside, the wind presses against turf walls 2 meters thick. No sound but the low creak of timber settling in the cold. Somewhere in the dark, a man opens his eyes, sits up, reaches toward the hearth. The fire lives another night.